yeah, with that, you want to, with like a niche or your topic that you're going to be talking about, you want to make sure it's either something that you're just going to go so in depth towards, right? That you have a lot of content that's refreshing and different, or you want to kind of have that, like, there's like the broader approach as well, where you kind of do a lot of different things every time. And I think it's good to, like, actually, I think we're talking about branding at one point. It's good to like try and find sort of what at least your main premise is of a thing. So ours, we had that difficulty with our show, which we're like, what are we calling ourselves? Like, what is this topic? Because we were kind of like similar to you. We were like, we just want to interview cool people and talk about cool stuff. Or like, how do we make that? That's not a good tagline. Interview cool people, talks about cool stuff. That's terrible. Nobody's good. They might listen, probably not. And so we ended up realizing, okay, well, we want people to learn things from it. So it's gonna be like an educational show. And then we want it to be humorous and funny because we're humorous and funny, and we know we like making that kind of stuff more accessible. I think humor makes so many things more accessible. So we're like, oh, there we go, educational comedy. So that's kind of the pitch that I would tell everyone, like 30-second pitch, right? I think there's a word in film and movies for when you're making a movie, like what is the one sentence, like log line? I think it's a log line. Which podcasts you could use the same terminology? What's the log line? So figuring that out with your show, I think, it's super important to give yourself like a kind of a guide and like a plan, essentially, because then you can kind of like, okay, coming back to it, this is what we're trying to do every time, sort of. And even if that is a broad log line, at least you're starting there until you maybe over time figure it out and narrow it down. And yeah, so I think there's a lot of ways you can still take a broad sort of show with lots of different things and make it specific. For example, there's a show called Time for Your Hobby. Super great. Alex is awesome, and I follow him on Twitter all the time. And he does like great show notes and great just like his like everything, his equipment. Oh man, he's awesome, and he's just a nice person. But his show's called Time for Your Hobby, so he just interviews people about their hobbies, and that's it. That's like super broad, but he's narrowed it into like a specific focus and with a good title, right? And so yours may be like something about like the global like interviews around the world, something like that, going around like that kind of a topic or something. So kind of like finding a way, like how can I pitch this in one clear sentence that will be covering pretty much everything, so people know what they're getting into when they're listening to it. Because like you have to think also, this is like a writing thing, this is a marketing thing, this is so many backgrounds that I've had. You have to think not from your own brain, but from like other people's brain. You know, why is someone going to listen to you, and like why do they want to read your content or listen to it? What are they going to get out of it? Because that's the perspective you need to take. Because as much as we want it to always be about ourselves, it's not. Everything has to have a benefit to the person consuming it, or else they're not going to want to consume it.
Oh yes. Well, the two reasons for the podcast is I want to learn a lot as well. Like with comedy and with a lot of things I'm doing, I haven't made it where it's my full-time job. So yeah. I thought I'll kill two birds with one stone. I want to learn how to do that, and then I can help other people who want to achieve the same thing by talking to people who have made what they love their full-time job. Hello and welcome to the Marvins World podcast, a podcast where we speak to tantalizing and scrumptious people who will make people like you and me make what we love a full-time job. If you like the podcast, please leave a review on iTunes and share it with your friends. If you don't like it, you don't have to share it or tell anyone, or you can share it with the person you hate the most. In today's episode, we're speaking to the amazing Victoria Fraser. You know, like House of Fraser, but like Victoria. And like she is a lady of many different fields, and she is someone who I'm sure has a lot of stories to tell us today.
Hi, this is exciting. Thanks so much for that scrumptious intro. Very good. Very clever. I like the word choice. Yeah. My name's Victoria. As you said, I'm a lady of many talents. We'll go with that, right? I've done a lot of different jobs in my life. But now in the last like 4 or 5 months, I've started freelancing. And so I'm slowly building up my own sort of business, doing a whole lot of different things for my clients. But one of them being podcasting, because that's what we're doing here today. I started a podcast 2 years ago with a friend of mine, got really into it. And I've encouraged lots of friends also to make their own podcasts. And I was like, you know what? People are actually like, I started with a friend of a friend who wanted to start his podcast. And then they were like, oh, my friend over here does podcasts. She could probably help you. And he was like, totally. And he was just a local entrepreneur, businessman person. And I helped him on his show. And he actually like paid me to edit and do a bunch of just general kind of production work for him. And I was like, oh, someone's going to pay me for this? This is crazy. This could be, what? Really? And I actually got the freelancing mostly focused on writing at first, but then realized I could also add that podcasting and audio editing and various other things that I do around that to my skill set. And yeah, I have a couple steady clients, and I've been slowly building my business in the last only like couple of months, and it's already getting like people are reaching out to me sometimes, which is exciting. Cause the biggest thing being a freelancer is trying to find clients. So it's nice when they start to come to you every once in a while.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I do a lot of copywriting, like internet website content, and I also do a lot of podcast work, be it audio editing, writing show notes, transcribing, whatever someone needs.
Yeah, I mean, it helps. I mean, what's it called? A podcast. I was speaking to a guy who manages a podcast network, and he says that some people, they're better at doing the copywriting, but are really terrible at the editing. So like, guys, if you want two for the price of one, Victoria Fraser is here.
I do a lot. It's funny. My clients always like, oh, can you do this? Can you do this too? And there's a couple times where I'm like, okay, I really don't like transcribing. I already do all this other stuff. Maybe go find someone else or like a computer to do it, because I'm good. Anyway.
Yeah. I tried to manually transcribe some YouTube videos a while back, and that takes ages, and I don't think it's really worth doing.
My God, no. Please don't. Anyone who needs to know about podcast transcribing, just go get one of those programs. They're like $10 a month. I think Otter is one, and there's others that are pretty cheap. I forget the other one. There's 2 or 3 major ones that most people use. They're not that expensive. They do a pretty decent job. You do have to comb through it still, just to fix certain things depending on like the quality of the audio and how well people talk. You know what I mean? Like not how well they talk, but like how they're just right, how crisp it is, their enunciation. I am terrible at talking despite liking to talk. Yeah.
So if someone, if someone's, I don't know, my name's Dave. Mm-hmm. I've never created a podcast before. I'm new and I want to do a podcast on teddy bears.
Hell yeah, Dave.
And like, how would you sort of go out to educating them on like the software to use, and like how would you take them from step 1 to step 10?
To step 10. I mean, it is a lot of steps. You're right there. For just starting, literally, I mean, I kind of asked the person like, okay, what do you want to do with it? Because there's a lot of different goals, and it can kind of like differentiate sort of what path it would put you on. Because some people, they're like, I just want to talk about teddy bears, and I don't really care if I make money, and I don't really care if anyone even listens. I just want to talk about teddy bears. Like, okay, great. I'd probably say there's a couple free or cheap services, which are not ones that I prefer myself, but I know a lot of people use them, especially to get started. So Anchor is a really big one. Not a big fan of them for a couple of reasons personally, but I respect that a lot of people love them, and they are free. So Anchor is a good beginner one for people who have like that really casual aspect to it, and they just don't care about the audio quality. They just kind of want to just do a thing for fun, like the hobbyist kind of person. But if you were like, I have this thing, like I have audio drama, like a script I wrote in university, and I want to turn it into an audio show, right? Like so many great audio dramas are out there. And I'm going to have actors. I'm going to probably need a couple. I'm going to need a bit of a production value. Then I'm like, okay, you're going to want to do something a little bit different. In that case, there's lots of other options that are like not that much money. Like you can still do a lot of podcasts for very cheap. My first host that I did was Buzzsprout, which was great. And I do send people there just because they're just so user friendly. Their interface is great. Customer service, fantastic. I really could rave about them all day, but that's one of the beginner ones that I started with. There's a lot of other ones that people use. I've also used Libsyn, and now I'm on Pinecast with the network that I am with. I'm going to be launching a new show in December. So Pinecast is another one that's pretty good as well. I like their website and their services. But yeah, anyway, I would basically ask what they want first, because if it's a hobby thing, then sure, go with one of the cheap ones, because with Anchor, that's, I should have clarified. I mean, if we're saying they know nothing, they probably don't even know what I'm talking about, which is that these are all podcast hosts, which is what you need to have a podcast. And that's essentially the website RSS feed where your podcast is going to be uploaded. And then from there, it goes to all the different directories, which are Apple, Spotify, Google Play, wherever. That's like the first thing. And that's honestly the hardest thing for a lot of people. They're like, oh my God, I'm so intimidated. What do you mean? Because it's like making a website. Making a website's hard. Making an RSS feed, though it's very simple, scares a lot of people away. You can't just, it's not like just uploading something on the internet on like Facebook. It's having to do a whole thing. And so that's why I would say first the host to kind of decide where they want to go there, because you can switch and it's not hard. But, I think it's just good to set yourself up in the beginning with what your plans and goals might be, because it just saves you time later on down the road. Because for example, with our website that we did for our podcast, we switched website hosts, probably like 5 times because we just kept having issues and it was terrible. We started with like GoDaddy and then we were with so many and they were terrible. Before we finally settled on, I don't remember what we chose in the end because I didn't really do it. But yeah, so starting with the host, find out what your goals are before you kind of just dive in, because like, I don't know, like there's a lot of different ways to start. And I think that's why it's confusing for a lot of people, and that kind of stops them from making that first step. As for programs with Anchor, I think you can edit it on the app on your phone itself because you record with your phone, which again, not great equipment, but if you're a hobbyist, it's fine. Yeah, well, I was going to say next. And then if you're not a hobbyist, if you're still a hobbyist, but you have a microphone or your computer mic, then I would go with Audacity, which is free. It's not technically a DAW because it rewrites your files, but it is free, or GarageBand if you're on Mac. Also, I think it comes with Mac, so it's basically free. Those are 2 great beginning ones. And then as you get better, you can upgrade your software later on.
I use Adobe Premiere Pro. Is that okay?
That's probably fine. I don't know that one.
What have been some, so with you helping people, effectively you sort of help people's brands, effectively you're a brand producer.
Yeah, kind of. I help in whatever capacity that they're sort of looking for. So if someone's just starting, then I will set up the podcast host and I will do the audio editing. I tend to also do the descriptions, but it kind of depends on the person. Like sometimes they want to do it themselves and they don't like the show notes. But sometimes they don't. So it depends on the person. And yeah, I don't know. I definitely do a lot of the pre-launching stuff. I end up being brought onto shows where they're just starting out with stuff. But have I worked on any? I've worked on a couple that were already kind of going on, and they were looking for someone to do the show notes. Like they already did the audio editing and everything themselves. So I just did the writing. But yeah, it kind of depends on what people need, because I've also done just like the audiograms for people, if like the little video things. Those are fun. And with the podcast that I first ran and we did everything. Like we did booking people. Like a lot happens for the podcast, like more than people realize. Like booking people, managing the social media, editing. I was the editor. She's now obviously taken on everything, which is great. I'm so proud of her. She's come so far. But yeah, I forget the question now.
How? So no, it's fine. It's cool. How long did it take for you to go on the journey of like growing your podcast to where it's at now?
So our podcast we started 2 years ago, and like not quite, just under 2 years. But I guess that's just exactly how I first got into podcasting. That's maybe what you'd like to know, right? I did a degree in creative writing at UBC. So that's the university in like British Columbia in Canada, where I am. And I just did one class in my whole program. At the very end, I was like, you know what? There's room in this podcasting radio show class. I'm just going to take it because it fits with my schedule. I had no idea what I was getting into. And I had never even listened to a podcast really. I thought I would hate them because I hated, what's it called? My ex at the time, well, ex now, partner at the time, he loves sports radio and I hate sports radio so much. I don't know why people listen to it, but So I thought, okay, people talking, that sounds horrible. No, thank you. So I literally had never listened to a podcast. I signed up this podcasting, like writing class and like a little bit of production. And I had to like listen to a show and he's like, all right, guys, 'cause, like you all like podcasts, right? Thanks for signing up my class. What's your favorite show? And I'm like, and I knew one. I knew about one podcast that was super random that like a friend of a friend had made. And I listened to it and it was really weird. Great show. It's very strange, but he's like a weird poet person. So that's why it's a weird show. And I had listened to that before the class and I didn't really get it either because it was also just a very strange podcast to listen to for like my first one. So like I go to the class and I'm like, it's an interesting show. Like I kind of like bullshit my way to like trying to explain it because I also just don't really know what podcasts are. And the professor was like, can you explain that? And I was like, I don't even remember. I used some word that was kind of vague, I guess, and I could not really explain it because I was like, listen, it's just weird. But yeah, so in that class and after that class, I have now listened to many podcasts. Like he got us started on Serial, which is it's like one of the first podcasts to go viral. It's like a journalism kind of one about true crime. And I got really into Spirits, which is one about like myths and legends. And I kind of discovered the different types and topics that I love. So I really like history podcasts or like science podcasts, because like a lot of them can go very in depth. Anyway, that's how I got into podcasts. Was by accident, essentially, university in my creative writing degree. Decided to make one like half a year after that class, finally. Like I had made some of the class, but I made like a consistent one with a friend who, again, I kind of bumped into her on the street for the first time in like years. We went for coffee, realized we both love listening to podcasts, and then wanted to start our own. So it was not like a direct thing right away. It was definitely kind of a accidental stumbling into it. I forget. Yeah. Okay. That's what I'm saying. Was there another question there? I just got sidetracked. I do that. I'm sorry.
So we spoke about your journey into podcasting, but but how did it grow? How did it?
Oh, how did I grow it? Okay. Right. I was like, this was the first part. I forget what the other thing was. Got it. Right. So with the podcasting and growing it, I know everyone always wants to know how to grow their listeners, and that's like the repeated thing over and over. I really think it's not, there's like, okay, podcasting is a long-term thing. It is not something that you could just do instantly. And like, there's a couple success stories that are sort of out there that you hear about for sure. I think, like, trying to think of one, what was a show? Like My Favorite Murder is a show that I think it picked up pretty quickly because it was sort of a really unique niche thing. Like it had combined true crime and comedy, which was essentially two different niches into like one new niche. And it just got super big, I think, fairly quickly. And there's a couple other shows that have done that. But generally, if you're not doing something like super groundbreaking, I don't think it's going to go super fast for you. This is how it goes. Like, so I have a whole article on this that I've written as well about like what you should know before you go into podcasting, which is that, again, it's not a quick thing in most cases. Joe Rogan, huge podcast, not personally listened to him, but his name is dropped all the time because I think he has like the most listeners or something. And he was like a TV show host before that and like worked in radio or something. Like he did a whole bunch of stuff in his career before he came into podcasting. So he kind of brought that life experience and that audience into his podcasting career. So that's why he is so successful. So like if you're not already have an audience and you're like kind of celebrity and you're not a very unique thing, it's just not going to be a fast thing. So I would just like take that mindset of like, it's really a slow and steady thing. And if you pick a really good niche and you pick a really good topic, then sure, it could pick up. But I think just that expectation makes people feel very discouraged along the way. And like, I didn't have that expectation. And I think that's kind of why we did so well, because we promoted it to our friends because we genuinely liked it. We made something that we were proud of, and we promoted it on social media. We made a lot of connections. And so like, if you're going to go more the organic route, which is what we kind of did, I would say like, start with just making a show because you want to make a show and make it good, make it something you're proud of. Like listen to it. And if you're kind of like, I kind of sound like this is kind of like, listen to some good podcasts and then listen to yours and then see what you can, if there are any differences that you're kind of noticing, like, oh, mine kind of, the audio is not great, or I'm stumbling a lot and I should cut that out. Like, you can tell what is not great. So kind of trust your instincts there and making it good. Right. And organically growing it through so many different channels. There are so many like groups of people out there who just love to share with each other. And I found lots of podcasts through networking online on social media. And that was, I think, what one of the other ways that we did it. We also had a show where we interviewed people. So our guests would promote the show to their group of friends and their network. So I think if you have a show that brings on people other than your own personal like bubble, then you're also going to get more exposure there, right? So I think organically, just like taking it slowly and just doing what you can to just share it to people and making something you're proud of is the best way to kind of keep growing. And you never know. One year you can end up actually getting, I think in the first year we did get like with less than the first, it was like totally like 6 months or something, we hit 2,000 downloads, which I was like shocked. I was like, holy shit, people are actually listening to this. I can't remember how long it took, but excuse me. But yeah, so as for like more specific details on that, I would say Twitter is a really good resource. Twitter, I was never into Twitter. Now I am, but like I resisted for so long. It was not a social media site that I just thought I needed. But a lot of networks and communities on there. So podcasting, I think that's actually how we got invited to the podcast network we're on, was I had followed one of the hosts of a different show that was in Vancouver, and they followed me back and were like, oh, your show's great. Do you want to come on my show and I'll interview you? And then later on, they invited us to join their podcast network. We're like co-op. It's kind of like a group of us. Yeah, that was like super awesome because I just got that organically through Twitter by liking and interacting with other people in the community.
Oh, so it's called, so the podcast networks work a bit like MCLNs in YouTube.
I don't know what that is, unfortunately. I'm not familiar with YouTube.
So of YouTube, they have a thing where if you're a real big creator, they have these big marketing agencies which help promote your stuff, but they get a cut of the amount of views, and what you make, they get a cut out of it. But they manage you and they help make what you do easier.
Right. Yeah, that's probably the case for some of the really big networks. We're a pretty small one, so we're just it's all local Vancouver shows. I think there's only 6 to 8 shows on it. There'll probably be 10 by the end of the year, which is great. It's slowly building. Yeah, I'm not familiar with how the big ones work, but I would imagine if you were on like one of the really big networks, it's probably similar to like that kind of process where you have more resources to help you, and they probably also like share and promote it. I know with ours, we do promote it with each other. Like we do stingers at the end, so like you revolve kind of through the different shows in the network, so they get like essentially a free ad to each other, right? So it's definitely like, it's like a supportive kind of group of people helping each other out. That's our network anyways, which is why like maybe that's not the right term, but like it's a network. I'm gonna say it's a network.
How does the network help you rather than just be like a lone wolf podcaster?
For us, it was actually great because for like a lot of things, because we had to decide to like whether we wanted to join with them initially, because they had a few different joining options, which was just kind of casually joining or like joining. And then I think similar to what you said, where they might take a cut. And we joined in like a sort of just like we're affiliated or like loose, we're like related to them, but not heavily involved. And they, there's a lot of perks to joining them. The going on other shows with each other, so getting more exposure, getting more tips and advice from other podcasters, because like that's the thing with everything. I've learned so much from just asking people like, hey, what do you do to edit? And they're like, oh, I do this. I'm like, oh my gosh, what? That's so smart. And then because like, finding these things out for yourself takes a lot longer. There's a lot of knowledge out there. Yeah, exactly. So like getting a mentor and getting like other people to kind of learn from. And then also like if you're a network with us, I think we have a network account essentially on, and I don't know if it's available for everyone. I think maybe they just got a really good deal because they were with them for like early on, but they're with Pinecast and they're like a network package. So we have a good deal. So every single show is together paying one price for our subscription instead of individually paying it. So I think it's like $4 or $5 a month for our podcast compared to like $10 on like just if we were alone or something.
Oh yeah, I pay about £30 a month with my.
Whoa! Yikes.
It's quite a lot. I use Acast.
Yeah, I don't know that one. There's so many, and there's so many all the time. It depends also the package you want. Like I've never done a show more than like bi-weekly or like monthly. So like in that case, you don't need that many hours. And so like I usually go for the cheap subscriptions.
So one of the things is I used to do it at the start of lockdown. I'd do an episode every week, but now I'm starting up it to twice a week.
Oh boy, that's nice.
and then I'm gonna get set up on YouTube where I do like a couple of clips, and then I do the podcast as well. But
Yeah.
I used to do the video versions of it as well, but that took too much
Podcasting.
effort. So
No, I'm sure.
I'm just doing the image and the sound with it, because that's just too much work. I don't have an editor, so it's just going to take too long.
Yeah, video editing and all that, I'm like loosely aware of. I have had people be like, "Hey, can you do videos as well?" And I'm like, "Please, I only have so many skills." And so I actually, at one point, probably will inevitably have to learn that just for myself and for knowledge, and if, like at least at like a low level of it. But yeah, there's like a lot when you start taking on like a lot of that, and like it can add up the amount of time, like the editing, the recording, the trying to get people on, and then you want to promote it on social media and in Facebook groups or on like a Discord server. Because again, there's so many different communities that you can try and join. Yeah, no, it takes a lot of time, and like actually making the content, people don't realize all the work that goes into it, and you can make it less work for yourself if you like know the right tricks, or if you just have setups that are, you're more casual about it. You're not going to go in and edit aggressively, like I do sometimes. But yeah, it kind of depends. I think one way to at least reduce that, one thing that I see a lot of beginners do, is they just don't record with a good enough audio quality. And so I really encourage people, I'm like, get a microphone, or like set yourself up in a room that you're not too echoey and all that stuff. Cause like everyone thinks you can fix it in the post production, like after it's recorded, but you really can't. There's a lot of things you cannot fix. You could try, but it would just be, you would go crazy trying to fix like bad audio. So I always just try and tell people, like, save yourself editing time by recording a good piece of audio the first time.
How am I doing so far?
Lovely.
I use the Yeti Blackout. Is that a good fit?
Yeah, I've heard good things from the Yetis. I have a Samsung QDU, which I normally record with. This is something else. I actually don't know what this is. I got it and I liked it because it was red, but it sounds okay.
Yeah, I had a weird thing with the Yeti Blackout. It was actually working okay. There was like a technical issue with the Mac, which I sorted out. And I asked them for some help. They gave me some suggestions. It didn't work. And then they sent me another free one. But there wasn't actually a problem with it. It's just that they didn't give me good advice and I had to fix it myself. So I've got two of them now. I've got a silver one here. I thought I would take the new one because I like the color silver.
Perfect. Honestly, I love when that happens. When you're like, this is not working, and they just send you another one. You're like, okay. And then you're like, wait, this was just me. I was the problem. Like, yeah, I've done customer service jobs. So like all the time people are like, it's not working. There's something wrong. And then it ends up being something so obvious, but then you end up sending them another one anyways, just because they're so mad at you. And then they call back and they're like, yeah, you were right. I figured it out. Sorry. Now I have two. And I'm like, keep it. We don't care.
Yeah, it's funny when they're like that. Like with Amazon as well, you say that to them and they just, I can't be bothered. Take it.
Right? Yeah. Oh yeah. I actually had ordered something from Amazon, like a computer mouse, and then it didn't even come. And so I let them know, like, the package was just open and it obviously fell out on the way. And then they gave me a refund. They didn't ask for a picture or anything, which, I mean, how can you take a picture of something that didn't come? But still, they had asked for no evidence. They were just like, yep, here's a refund. I was like, I could have just lied and they would have just given me a refund. I was like, oh my God, people probably do that. I'm sure like you can't get away with it that many times, but I was like, huh, weird. It was very easy.
One thing I want to ask you, because I've got I want to use me as a case study for like when you're like, so I want to ask you, what is your sort of, so when you interview someone, you want to help them out, you ask where they are, right? And so in my situation, I've been doing it since lockdown and I'm near 500 listens. But I'm getting I'm sort of, it's upping to maybe 2 or 3 listens a day.
Yeah.
What should I go and do? So the podcast is basically based on, as I posted on Facebook. Yeah.
I mean, that's how I found you. So there you go. You got me.
Yes, I got you. And yeah, I've got some interesting guests as well for it as well. Got Andre Sinau, who's a Armored Combat League man, and he's on Night Fight History Channel. So that was interesting. Yeah, Yeah, well, I'm probably going to be doing the podcast forever because I enjoy doing it. Like just talking to people that are interesting. And I want to talk to a lot of people from different like industries as well.
Mhm.
Because I find if I talk to too many people from a certain industry, I'm going to rehash a lot of the same things. And then
Yeah.
when I'm talking them, I get a bit bored, and I think it'll
Mhm.
come across.
Oh yeah, that's definitely important. I think yeah, with that you want to with like a niche or your topic that you're going to be talking about, you want to make sure it's either something that you're just going to go so in depth towards, right? That you have a lot of content that's refreshing and different, or you want to kind of have that like there's like the broader approach as well, where you kind of do a lot of different things every time. And I think it's good to like actually I think we're talking about branding at one point. It's good to like try and find sort of what at least your main premise is of a thing. So ours, we had that difficulty with our show, which we're like, what are we calling ourselves? Like, what is this topic? Because we were kind of like similar to you. We were like, we just want to interview cool people and talk about cool stuff. We're like, how do we make that? That's not a good tagline. Interview cool people and talks about cool stuff. That's terrible. Nobody's good. They might listen, probably not. And so we ended up realizing, okay, well, we want people to learn things from it. So it's gonna be like an educational show, and then we want it to be humorous and funny because we're humorous and funny, and we know we like making that kind of stuff more accessible. I think humor makes so many things more accessible. So we're like, oh, there we go, educational comedy. So that's kind of the pitch that I would tell everyone, like 30-second pitch, right? I think there's a word in film and movies for when you're making a movie, like what is the one sentence like log line? I think it's a log line. Which podcasts you could use the same terminology? What's the log line? So figuring that out with your show, I think it's super important to give yourself like a kind of a guide and like a plan essentially, because then you can kind of like, okay, coming back to it, this is what we're trying to do every time, sort of. And even if that is a broad log line, at least you're starting there until you maybe over time figure it out and narrow it down. And yeah, so I think there's a lot of ways you can still take a broad sort of show with lots of different things and make it specific. For example, there's a show called Time for Your Hobby, super great. Alex is awesome, and I follow him on Twitter all the time, and he does like great show notes and great just like his like everything, his equipment. Oh man, he's awesome, and he's just a nice person. But his show's called Time for Your Hobby, so he just interviews people about their hobbies, and that's it. That's like super broad, but he's narrowed it into like a specific focus and with a good title, right? And so yours may be like something about like the global like interviews around the world, something like that, if you're going around like that kind of a topic or something. So kind of like finding a way like what how can I pitch this in one clear sentence that will be covering pretty much everything, so people know what they're getting into when they're listening to it. Because like you have to think also, this is like a writing thing, this is a marketing thing, this is so many backgrounds that I've had. You have to think not from your own brain, but from like other people's brain, you know? Why is someone going to listen to you, and like why do they want to read your content or listen to it? What are they going to get out of it? Because that's the perspective you need to take, because as much as we want it to always be about ourselves, it's not. Everything has to have a benefit to the person consuming it, or else they're not going to want to consume it.
Oh yes. Well, the two one of the two reasons for the podcast is I want to learn a lot as well. Like with comedy and with a lot of things I'm doing, I haven't made it where it's my full-time job. So I
Yeah.
thought I'll kill two birds with one stone. I want to learn how to do that, and
Yeah,
then I can help other people who want to achieve the same thing by talking to people who have made what they love their full-time job.
totally. I think that's a really awesome goal. And I think that like learning something yourself and then sharing that process and that journey with other people is something that a lot of people can relate to and they'll want to experience along with you. And I think it's also just very humble to admit that we don't know everything. And like I don't know, people see from the outside like they think I've got all my shit together. We all face imposter syndrome. Like I do make like my money online writing. I like most of it. I have actually this month I'm doing, it'll be my most successful month, but you know, and also editing, obviously, because I do that. But I also still like I work a couple odd jobs here and there to like supplement my income. Just and I have some savings that I'm living off of, so I have like kind of multiple income streams, kind of covering myself. But I am still doing what I like to do, and I think you know, you just like zone out halfway through a sentence, and then you're like, where was I going? I had a thought. I don't know. I haven't had enough coffee today. I'm still working on it. But yeah, no. I think I was just saying basically everyone is learning, and I think admitting that you don't know everything is it's also kind of like for other people when they're like, wow, wait, you don't feel like you know this, but you seem like you do to me. So then wow, okay, everyone gets that. It's just kind of like, it's another relatable thing that I think a lot of people can understand, and sort of like get behind, right? So yeah, no, teaching yourself and is that teaching others is also the best way to teach yourself, right?
Yeah. It's one of the things I find quite funny when people say find your niche or whatever, but I don't think you find that until you go out and do it enough. And also, like you say, listen to your audience or whatever. I haven't really got an audience yet, so I don't know what to do yet. You can't say, but like, I'm just enjoying doing it at the moment, having a bit of fun, and whoever comes on a podcast, I'll try and promote them as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just want to learn, and whoever wants to listen, wants to learn. That's it at the moment.
There you go. And that's how it starts. I think a lot of people, the biggest thing for any sort of creative endeavor like this is just get started. And even if you're doing a shitty job in the beginning, you're still doing it. You're still further ahead than you were yesterday. Once you're actually starting, you're starting it. And like, you're not going to be great at anything. You have to just fucking just do it. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, I think people are so afraid of being shitty at things that stops them from getting going. Like, I'm also guilty of this. Like, I love to do way too much research before I do something and like feel prepared. And honestly, like getting into the freelancing, I was not prepared at first, and I only did it because, well, not only did it, I did it because I had a roommate who was like, yo, you write really well, just go write on the internet, you'll make money. And I was like, I don't think that's a real thing. She's like, no, it is. And then it was. But yeah.
So one thing that I'm gonna look at, it's quite a funny thing with a lot of things that are going on at the moment. Like the advice that you get on a lot of forums for like social media, all these things, is they say a lot of bland things. I mean, they are correct, but it's sometimes the advice you get online, they try and paint it as the be all and end all of getting you to where you want to go, when it should be just they should specify these are general tips and ideas that you should try, not that it's going to change, like guaranteed. But then again, they want people to read it and to look at it, so they feed bullshit.
That's true. I'm a fan of specific and practical advice for everything. And the articles that I write, I also do blogging on Medium as like a portfolio thing for clients and just for myself, because Medium pays me a little bit if I write really well, which apparently I do, thank God. But yeah, I'm like, okay, get to the point, like be specific with everything, like be practical, and like, don't like, I'm so sick of this like paywall stuff on the internet of like everything's hidden away. And like, no, and knowledge should be free and it should be accessible. That's why we have libraries. That's why we have schools. Like, and I just really think everything, that's what the internet was so great at the beginning, because everything was free and everything was like, anyone could post anything and share anything. And a lot of people, they just like, I love just sharing my knowledge. And I like creep on Reddit and I look at people's podcast posts and I give them advice on their podcast, because I just like to help people. And I just like to do that because I'm like bored. And so and I'm like, this is fun. Like, people want to share their knowledge. We love talking about what we love to do. And so I'm a big advocate for like, everything should just be like, I can, thankfully with Medium, even though they have a subscription based model, I can share a friend link. So if someone wants to read my article, I can still have them read it for free, which is why I kind of was like, okay, good, because otherwise I would never get behind any of those paywalls.
Can I read it for free?
Yeah, I'll send you my stuff. I'll send you my articles. You'll love my podcast articles. You're the perfect person for it. But yeah, I really think like I like to give very clear, specific advice, because like that's just what people need, and that's what we want, and that's what's going to benefit someone the most, is when they can like easily understand it and practically implement it, right? Yeah. Like Twitter, just like engaging, following people that you like, and commenting and liking their stuff. Like, that's literally what you need to do with it. That's simple, but that's the clear advice. I can't just say, like, I can say, go make a Twitter profile. That's my advice. That's not going to help me, because that's kind of confusing, because maybe I don't know how to use Twitter. I don't really get it, right? Instead, I can say, well, here, like, make audiograms and post those on Twitter. Use like certain hashtags. Find another network and start following and interacting with them. Like, here's tangible things you can do that will help you. And again, the one issue is like, these things aren't like the people who are saying this is the one way to do it. I don't think there's one way to do anything. And I like, so like you're talking about the niche thing, like my niche in my creative writing that I do is, I don't have one. I do so many different things. I've written for like cannabis blogs. I've written for outdoor gear. I've written like newsletters on anxiety, because I have a degree in psychology. I've done so many different things, because like I this is what I realized actually very recently. I mean, I always kind of knew it, but I actually put words to it. Was that I really like to do everything. You know what? The jack of all trades thing, there's actually more to that saying, which is not a jack of all trades is master of none. The full saying goes, jack of all trades, master of none is better than the master of one, because it's better to do a lot of things crappily than one thing stupidly well. There are some exceptions, but overall, I would say that is how I approach things. Like I love to just do things and learn new stuff. And even if that thing that I'm doing for a little bit doesn't help me now, it might help me later on. So I did graphic design in high school for my yearbook, and I didn't pursue that as a career, but it gave me the ability to make dumb little social media posts and Instagram captions for clients and for myself. So those skills can always come up later and be helpful for you, even if they don't seem like they're useful now. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's unique skills. Yeah. I think that it's, what do you see with podcasts going at the moment? Because it's getting more and more competitive, especially with lockdown and everything going on at the moment.
Yeah.
How do you see podcasts shaping out in the future? Because it is getting more and more competitive, and it's going to get harder and harder.
Yeah, that is a great question. I still think that there is so much room in podcasting because radio in general actually is a very different medium from we all thought radio would just die with the internet and computers and TV, right? But it didn't. Why is that? And actually, it's probably people are listening to more radio than ever. And that's because you can do something while listening. If I'm listening to a podcast, I can do my laundry, or I'm on the bus, or I'm painting. I like to do it when I'm making art, and just actually with friends. We'll even just I have a couple friends who are also diehard podcast listeners, and we'll just eat dinner and hang out while listening to a podcast. I don't know. It's kind of nice, and it doesn't hurt my eyes. So it's a great thing when I'm going to bed. I don't have to have a blue light screen in front of me. I can just listen to something instead. So it's another way to get your content, and it gives your eyes a break. So I think that there is still a lot of room there, and it's still a medium that will be used by us forever. I don't think podcast and radio are ever going to go away. And really, radio has just transitioned into podcasting, which makes sense. That's how movies and television transitioned into streaming and Netflix. That's just we just readapted our need into a new technology. And so I think there's still a lot of growth there. Talking about the numbers, recently being in the last year or so, I remember hearing, I think Apple officially said there was 1 million podcasts on their platform. And 1 million podcasts sounds like a lot, but then when you actually look at how many YouTube channels there's way more YouTube channels than that. I can't even remember, 800 million, a billion. I don't know. There's probably not a billion, but it's a ton of YouTube channels, and podcast isn't anywhere near that yet. And even YouTube still has room for growth, and there's still topics and niches that aren't on there. I used to work in a customer service shop selling faucets and door hardware, and people would call us being how do I fix my faucet? How do I do this? And I had to basically be I'm going to guide you over the phone instead of through a video, because unfortunately they were silly and they did not have videos. But easily that company could have made a YouTube channel with those videos for people, and they would have loved it. So there's tons of opportunity still. I think it's just you need to be creative and just find it. And what are you looking for that you can't find on the internet? You can't find it, then make it.
Love.
Yeah. I mean, good luck.
No.
It's there. It's out there.
That sounds like a nursery story.
There you go.
No.
But yeah.
But you've covered a lot there, and I want to. One thing that I would like to tackle is just in the straightforward, simple sentences. What are your main professions that you make your living out from? So it's helping podcasters, being a podcaster, and I hear you're a comic book artist as well.
Yeah, you probably stalked my website a little bit. I have done so many things. I just have the art and the painting and the comics is another thing I studied in creative writing at UBC. And I took that class also on a whim because I just like drawing. And then I was wow, comics are great. And I love graphic novels. There's so many great artists that I follow that just make me laugh. Webtoons, webcomics. I'd love to do a little slice of life diary comic, but I haven't. That's one of many plans and dreams that I have. I know there's so many of them. That's also competitive. I'm whatever. So yeah, I don't make money on that really. I have sold my zines and small things at local festivals, but I haven't like turned that into a career so much. That one's much more of a hobby. But yeah, my income, you're curious. I read so much with like entrepreneurs and business people now, and it's like, multiple income streams, and like it's kind of true. So I make a little bit of money blogging on Medium, which is a platform where anyone can sign up to join. I think you can write and join for free, but I pay $5 a month for it because I think it's worth it, and it's a really great platform with so many great writers. If you sign up and write on it and send it to me, I will happily read your stuff, but not you, but anyone listening. Just, it's great. I love Medium. They pay you based on like people on the platform reading your stuff and liking and clapping for it. So if you write well and you like build up, again, networking communities, then you can sort of get a following on that. So yeah, Medium, I make money blogging. Freelancing, I started out on Upwork, and I got a couple podcast editing and writing clients like that I work with on there. Like I've done a couple one-off gigs, but I also just have like a steady, this many hours a week I do certain things for them. Or every once in a while they just like send me an email like, hey, can you write this by this time? I'm like, no problem. So I start on Upwork for my freelancing, and I have a couple clients off Upwork just through word of mouth and through friends and stuff like that. What's the other thing? And then I work in the film industry, so I do on a film set PA work, so production assistant, which is just a very easy job. And it pays pretty well. Long days. So usually when I'm on a film set, I can like send an email or something on my phone to clients, but I don't get a lot of writing work done on those days, depending how busy it is. So that's kind of like my third income. That's just like my kind of a day job, but I make like equal money. Well, not equal, almost equal money doing both that freelancing and the film stuff. And then actually the freelancing is starting to pick up so that it's probably going to surpass it, and I probably won't be doing the film set stuff anymore. But those are like a couple of the different like income streams that I have. I think that's it. Yeah, it's just those. Yeah, my clients off Upwork, my clients on Upwork, my blogging, and my film stuff. So that's how I make my money in a living.
Oh, and so you just stumbled across all of them, you said your journeys. Which do you prefer more? No, I'm joking. I'm not going to ask that. So you don't regret anything. Everything happens for a reason, and you can learn from all of it. So absolutely. What are the key things that have changed your life from podcasting and being a writer?
Things that changed my life before I got into this, or
how have they changed your life? Like before, were you a bodybuilder, like Miss Olympia, or were you like
you just
a beauty
want
pageant?
my other backstory, like what I did before all this? Honestly,
I mean, like, how did it change you? How have they changed you from what you were?
Right. Okay. So how the current job changed from what it was before. So before I used to be a bartender and customer service, 9 to 5 office job, and art teacher, a lot of different things. I just kind of, after university, you kind of jump around a little bit, figuring out what you want to do with the career. And I never really felt like those were the right path for me. I mean, I wanted them to be. I was also a 911 operator briefly. And that also, I was like, I want this to be the right thing. And then none of them really were. But with writing and podcasting, these are actually the thing that I wanted to do forever. Like I was a kid and I loved writing. I was like 5 years old. And for some reason, the principal at my very, very small elementary school, granted, the principal like pulled me out of class, or my teacher did, and they like read my story and they're like, she's a good writer. And they told me to keep writing. And like, I don't know, I was literally 5. I can't honestly, it makes no sense. It was a short story about, I don't know why they did that. It was really weird, but I like can't remember the rest of the memory very well. But so I've been like loving writing forever. When I went to university, I didn't really know what to pick at first, and I knew writing was one of them. So I did creative writing at least, and then I also double majored in psychology. And as for the podcasting, I always loved listening to music, listening to the radio, and like the radio show hosts. When I was a kid, I was always like, they're so fun and entertaining. I would love to be a radio show host. I would love to host anything. That would be so fun, right? What a dream job. And so that's actually something I also kind of always wanted to do since I was a little kid. But I never, it's like those kinds of careers or those career paths aren't something that people really push, I think, young people towards, which is
they don't.
Tragic, because like there's tons of ways to get involved, even if you're not the show host on the radio show. You can still be in the background doing the audio editing, or even just, start being the coffee bitch. Can I swear? Sorry. Start being the coffee person and then work your way up, right? I don't know.
Of course. Yeah. That's how it is. You
So,
read coffee, then you become the one that calls the name out, and then you tell everyone what to do. No.
That's exactly how it goes. I mean, sometimes. But yeah, I mean, like finding another way into an industry and maybe even just slightly around it. I think we get kind of lost in the ways of like, this has to be exactly it. So the writing, for example, I used to think I could never be a paid writer. Like, who's going to pay me to write anything? And for sure, poetry and books, novels, it's hard to get that into a career. It's possible still, very hard, much more competitive. But like writing for the internet on someone's blog and writing a story about them, writing articles that share information, because again, I love learning and teaching others. There's a lot more there than there is writing poetry, right? And so I think even if you can't do it the way you want to do it, you can find another way to sort of do it, like a periphery kind of career in a thing that you still love to do. So like, I still love writing, even if it's writing, a really boring how-to thing, or I don't know. I can't even say that they're boring, because I literally just love writing, but I find everything entertaining. And I also love to make something entertaining, even when it seems boring. So yeah, that's kind of how I changed my perspective on it.
Okay, so in 2 words, how have they changed you?
I use so many words. You're so cruel. 2 words, how they changed me. They would say just like, I mean, like perspective, perspective setting, sort of. Like, that's my perspective.
So they made you, they made you more grateful and more sort of they've made you, okay, so it's made you a lot happier and more fulfilled in life. That's what it's giving you.
Yeah, that was one of the things for sure. Yeah, you're right. I've just always been a happy person. So yeah, yes. I guess that's true. I'm definitely happier now for sure. Career-wise, I'm happier. It made me happy. I think it also just, it kind of changed the way I sort of approached my career, as instead of just something I make money at, something I can enjoy.
Okay. And so let's talk about your sort of, I'm sounding like I'm doing a life story here if I'm going to ask you this question, but okay. I want to ask you this question, and I want you to do like a very short summary, as if it's like a synopsis paragraph of a certain point.
Okay.
What? I'm sounding like a lawyer. No. How has your childhood shaped you into who you are?
Going a little Freudian. All right. My childhood, I moved around a lot. So I think I had a lot of different experiences. And because I sort of had a diverse upbringing and like moving in different places and lots of different friends with different interests themselves, that kind of fostered my own different interests. And I went through like a lot of change, which I think has just made me like able to adapt in new situations and not afraid of diving into something totally new and unexperienced before.
So those changes, did you travel a lot? Did you, what happened?
We just moved a lot. Like I still stayed in Canada, but we just kind of moved around into different houses, and I had lots of different friends. I went to like different elementary schools. So I had like sort of a bit of it's not like it was rough by any means. Like we had a lot of fun. I had a single mom who did a great job, to be honest. I think I turned out pretty darn good. But we just kind of moved, and I had to sort of figure out, new social circles and new friendships more often than a lot of people. And so I had, I think, less stability in my childhood, which, some people might think is a bad thing, but I've turned that into a good thing. And I'm really grateful for that.
Do you travel a lot now? But from what you say here, it sounds like you settled in a certain place and that you do a lot of your stuff in one place now, or are you still sort of traveling and like...
No, I still move. I still move too often. But I mean, I kind of did during my degree. I stayed in one spot for like 4 years. But now I'm moving again. Actually, still all in Canada. Still within Vancouver. But yeah, I mean, sure, Canada. I'm definitely like I'm Canadian, so I'm pretty fairly settled here. But I do travel and I like to go and visit new places and new cultures. Because one of my other like things that I love is just like anthropology and like just humanity as a whole. It's so interesting. And so I have done a lot of traveling outside of North America. So I've done a couple trips to Europe, Cuba, the coast down like the US and stuff. I think that's mostly, and like a little bit of
Whoa.
not technically Asia, but I was technically in Asia in like Istanbul because there's like the little point. It's kind of between Asia and Europe technically or something. So I was briefly in Asia, but that was the only one time. I would like to do more traveling to Japan and like China and other places like that.
There's a lot of story that I'd like to unearth here. So, if there are 3 countries that impacted you most in terms, and like what lessons did you learn from them that changed your life? And how would you say that in sort of short sentences to inspire and invigorate people listening on the podcast?
Oh my goodness. Okay. 3 countries.
Or 5.
5? That's even more. No, I mean 3 is still plenty. And a lesson in each one. My goodness. Okay, let me think. So I'll just start with one of the first countries that I went to that was like a really exciting experience. Not the US. Just kidding. That was the first country I ever left, obviously Canada, to go to US, but that's not the one that was most impactful. I went to Europe when I want to say like 19 or 20, for like a month long, Europe vacation type thing. And I went to a number of different countries while I was there. The first one was Turkey. And I really loved Turkey. I thought the people there were so friendly. I think we started in Istanbul, and then I kind of did like Ephesus, like Bodrum, and a couple other cities while I was there. And the people were just so warm and friendly. I got like a Turkish massage, which was fantastic, and the woman serenaded me in Turkish, and like her voice was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. And I learned a bit of Turkish while I was there, and they were just like, man, they were some of the happiest people, I swear. So I had a couple Turkish friends as well, and I really thought that they just, I mean, don't get me wrong, Turkish carpet salesmen are the worst. They will try to sell you a Turkish carpet like nobody's business. It is terrifying. And I had like a little Canadian flag, so I was like running from salespeople. Sometimes they're like, "Hey, Canadian," I'm like, "No, I don't want a carpet. I already bought one." 2, maybe I bought 2. We bought too many, but yeah. Other than that, the people are very friendly, and like I would learn like speak a bit of Turkish, and they would be super impressed. So, like that, I will stop talking about Turkey. That's the first country. I really like it there.
I want to add something to it. I think that could be quite funny. You could put them off a bit if they do that. Like, just I've seen Scrubs, right? And there's this scene where he's got this old man, and he asks, "What are you investigating me for?" And he says, "I've just farted." And then JD says to him, "We're investigating whether your gas is harmful to others."
Oh boy.
So I'm thinking, if someone says that to you, you could do you could say something really awkward and weird so they don't go near you. Like you say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I am allergic to carpets. If I go to carpets, it makes me throw up or something." And you're going up the wrong tree.
Honestly,
just act like, really weird and go.
That's exactly what I wanted to do. I had that same thought like years ago when I was there. I was like, oh my gosh, next time I go to Turkey, I should have a shirt that says allergic to carpets, and then they just won't approach me. And they'll be like, what? I mean, they probably won't read it. I'd have to write it in Turkish. Anyway, but it would be funny to have a Turkish saying on my shirt, and then just look like the whitest white person. They'd be like, what is wrong with you? Or something else weird like that to keep them away from me. Like, no more carpets. Turkish carpets are great, but I don't need that many. You need like 1, maybe 2. So yeah, that's Turkey. It was lovely. And like fresh orange juice. I mean, also the Canadian dollar there was good because they have the Turkish lira. So I could buy orange juice for like 50 cents. And I was like, this is fantastic. That's just countries that have different, freshly squeezed orange juice every day. Nice. Lovely. But I'm trying to think of another country that I should go with that like also impressed me.
England.
I have never been to England. My friend is studying in Scotland, and I was going to go over there and check out
Oh,
all the UK and stuff, but I have not yet. It's on my list. Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I can't. Your country I have not been to. I have meant to a couple times, but just has not happened. I was supposed to be going to Scotland like next year or like in the coming, like sometime around now because my friend's studying there and then COVID,
okay.
unfortunately. Um, okay, let me pick another one. I'm going to go with what's the country that I could pick that is good? I'm trying to remember the ones that I've been to before. What were the last time I was in? Okay, I got it. So I also went to a friend's wedding in Germany because she is German and lives there. And she lived in Bonn, and that's where the wedding was. But I did a whole trip to other countries as well while I was there. Obviously, because I'm flying to Europe, I'm going to go to more than just one country. They're all close enough. I did a little road trip, and I actually had gone to Amsterdam, realized Amsterdam was crazy expensive, and I could not afford to stay there. And so I spent one night in Amsterdam in like the most shittiest, terrible what's it called when like everyone's in a room together,
Hostel.
a what,
Hostel.
hostel, yeah, like a hostel. And it was expensive, and so it's like I'm good, can't afford Amsterdam, I'm going to go back to Germany.
Oh,
And so on the way back to Bonn, I was supposed to be staying in Amsterdam a couple days, but then ended up going to Dusseldorf in Germany. And I met like a guy at a McDonald's who was so friendly. And he's like, if you ever come to Dusseldorf, send me an email. I don't think I have his email anymore, just too bad. But Dusseldorf is really cool. It's like a business hub apparently. So there was like a lot of different cultures. So it felt very similar to Canada because I remember seeing
oh,
like a Korean restaurant and then like an Indian restaurant and also like an Italian restaurant and German food.
oh.
And that really surprised me because I was like, I don't know, I just like think of when you're elsewhere, you don't always like yeah, some places I feel like in Europe can be very still
Oh,
one kind of culture, and I thought Dusseldorf was cool because it had like a very diverse group of cultures there, which again I later found out why. And yeah, Dusseldorf was super cheap. I stayed at this hotel, like a very small, like tiny apartment kind of thing. The woman was hilarious because we checked in. It was me and my friend, and I like to go to hot tubs and pools because they are warm and delightful. So I asked her, is there a pool that I could go to in Dusseldorf to like go, like you'd be traveling, just want to go relax in a hot tub? And she was literally like disgusted. She was just like, a pool? You want to go to a pool? And she thought it was gross. And she's like, ugh, here's one, but why would you go there? And I was like, okay, strange. Did not go to the pool. But yeah, Germans don't like to swim. Anyway, that was funny. Other than that, Dusseldorf is really great. I think Germans are also like a very happy people, and they kind of like prank you a little bit, which is kind of funny. Like
oh.
my friend at the wedding, her husband would always, he didn't get me, but he got other people. He would like order a beer for them, and he'd order himself like a giant like liter of beer, and then he'd get the other person like a flight, like 4 ounces, um, which was hilarious. I laughed every time. So yeah, like lots of kind of goofs there. I thought the German people were entertaining and just like so blunt and just so different. Like it definitely, yeah, it was an interesting experience. It was kind of like not necessarily like less friendly, but definitely more like goofy and kind of like, I mean, this is just my generic experience. But yeah, still like I overall find that people everywhere I go are still, we're all people and we all have a lot more in common than we do have in different, but it's interesting to know like a tendency. So I thought that the Germany, specifically Dusseldorf anyways, was a super fun city, and I met some very friendly people as well. And
Oh.
it definitely very blunt people, which made me laugh. I think we could all be a little more blunt.
Mm. And what's the final country? What's the roast tomato? What is the chips with ketchup moment country?
Chips and ketchup country. My own, just kidding. We do have ketchup chips in Canada though, and they're delicious. I don't know if you know about that, but some people are like confused. I hate that I like ketchup chips, but I do because it does sound very gross because I don't like ketchup. All right, let's pick a third and final country. I'm trying to think of the other places I'd be to and like which one I would pick as another great one. So I always like forget some places that I had been. Yeah, I feel like I'm going to go with Cuba because I really, really love Cuba.
Ooh.
Yeah, I've been a couple times, and one time was definitely less good than the other time because my hotel had bed bugs, which was horrifying. But I survived. Yeah, it was real bad. And it was right actually, that was just before COVID happened. And I emailed WestJet and it was like, hey, this terrible experience happened because they have normally very good customer service. So I was expecting some sort of flight credit or something for the future, or like even just a discount, like whatever. But then obviously they could not and they never responded, which is fair. But other than that, anyways, Cuba, everyone says the Cuban food is terrible. This is just a thing that is said that is ridiculous. And for sure, if you're going to try and eat like an American in Cuba, it's going to be terrible because they don't have the same things that America has. And so, you know, we have lots of like canned meat and just things that are not fresh. If you eat like a Cuban, it's delicious. You know, have plantain chips and fresh fish. I had like the best crab of my life in Cuba. It was fantastic. So yeah, I really loved Cuba. I've gone back a couple times just because I loved it the first time I went. I think similar again, like the people were just very friendly, very helpful. Again, sometimes some try to scam you. That's just the nature of being a tourist, though. But I really valued that they have, because it's, you know, very communist as a country, and some people think that's a bad thing. And I'm sure there's some issues, but they have, because like education is free to university, they have all their like basic needs kind of met. People can kind of pursue things in a different way. So there's a lot of artists. And art is like actually kind of a job that's kind of respected there. So like I would meet artists and I'd be like asking them like, do you actually make money like selling your art? Like, is this like, because like an artist here is like a starving artist, whereas like an artist there is a little bit more of like it's not quite the same, I think, stereotypes towards that as a career path, which was interesting to me. And again, they cannot go to university and it's all paid for. Everything is covered with the government, which is awesome. I really think free tuition in university should be like a basic human right, and that we should all be able to afford that. Anyways, but I digress. Yeah, Cuba, a very interesting country, very nice people, and a very different sort of outlook on certain careers that I sort of haven't seen in a lot of places, which was very interesting. And yeah, I always buy so much art. Like I bought an original painting from this guy for way too cheap, and I think I gave him a little extra, but I don't know where it is. It's somewhere. And it was really, really cool. And yeah, again, really nice people, good food if you eat properly, like the way you should, which is when you're on vacation, you should eat how the people eat in that country. Personally, that's just my philosophy. And then find what you like. There'll be something, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, what you liked about Cuba is you've seen the Scarface film, and you were like, you've seen Tony Montana. You went, okay, you want to play games, and that's what made you go to Cuba, and that's what made you like it.
Absolutely.
No. So you've had quite an experience there. And what have been some stories within like a sentence or a couple of sentences that have really amazed you during your time of like helping people with podcasting? In a bad and good way.
Bad and good way, helping people. I mean, yeah, in the bad way is that I get things that I can't do. People think I'm so good at podcasting that they think I can fix the unfixable. I wish I could. But that's the only negative on that front I could think of. Yeah, the good way of podcasting hasn't been helping people. I just really like seeing people follow their passion and do something that they love, and like get really excited about it. Because I think, I don't know, I get excited about things and I love sharing that, and I love when other people have something that they also want to share. And so it's really been like rewarding to help someone off their feet and like go nudge them and be like, hey, start this thing, and then watch them kind of slowly progress as they learn a lot more about it. And then some people don't always keep up with it. I've helped a couple of friends start podcasts and then doesn't continue, but overall I think it tends to do pretty well. Not like that many, I'm still very, very new at this, but yeah, I really like learning about other people's passions and watching them grow, and do that.
Yeah, you're like a little teacher, like what's it called? But there's this scene where I was never a fan. I watched a little bit of that Glee thing, and I remember there's a scene at the end where Mr. Schuster sees the lady on Broadway.
Okay.
and
I
he's like
forget.
a big happy teacher at the end because like he put all that work into helping her, and then she
Aw,
became famous.
that's cute. Yeah, I get that. I could see that. I've also, yeah, because I've done a lot of educational things with kids making art and also teaching kids English and reading and writing. Yeah, watching people progress and like improve and, I don't know, you get like little good warm fuzzies inside where you're like, aw, I helped make that happen. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you two more questions before you go.
Sure.
Uh, what advice would you give to younger self, and what is a quote you like to live the rest of your life by?
Good questions. My younger self, I would just time travel back there and I would just prank her because I think she needs more of that. I wouldn't give myself any advice. I've done everything the way I've done it and I like how it turned out. So I don't think I would change anything. I would maybe just tell myself in like the dark moments of like, I really believe that a lot of life is sort of, there's a card in tarot card actually called the Wheel of Fortune. I think it's the Wheel of Fortune. Either way, whatever card it is. That's basically kind of like everything's a cycle. And every time there's an up, it'll be followed by a down. And every time there's a down, it'll be followed by an up again. Like that's just everything is cyclical. And I think that sometimes it's easy to forget that and get stuck in that negative thinking at times. But yeah, I would. I've been a pretty resilient person overall, and I've gone through all those things all right. So I think I don't need to give myself any different advice because I think I made the decisions that I made, which got me here already. And yeah, I always have issues with that question because I'm like, I don't know. If I told myself something different, then it doesn't work. Time travel, it undoes everything, and it's not the same, right?
Yeah.
But the paradox of it. But anyways, a quote that I live by. This is a quote that I apply to everything. It comes from a poet. I think his name is Paul Valery. Valery. He's French. I honestly don't even know if I've read any of his poems, but I saw this quote when I was a teenager, and I really, really like it. Is that a poem is never finished, only abandoned. And some people disagree with me on that, but I think that all the art that I do is kind of in this like one version of it. Like I really love editing, so I love changing things. I write articles and I publish them, and I go back and like, I don't like this word choice, and I kind of like do subtle changes here and there. But yeah, with my poetry and things that I do, I I like to do it again, and I like to do it differently because I think that there's so many different ways you can expand on something, and so many different ways that something can exist. And I don't think anything is really ever complete. And I apply it to my poetry especially, but I apply that to a lot of other things in my life as well. I hope I said the quote right now. I'm not sure. Oh my God.
I think you did.
I gotta Google it. Anyway.
So, one more thing I want to say to you. Is there anything you'd like to plug?
Oh man. Right. Yeah. This shameless advertising that time. I I'm so bad at this. Okay. My name's Victoria Fraser. So if you want to ever just know more about me, just straight up go to my website, victoriafraser.ca. That's the easiest. As for anything I'm working on artistically, right now I'm between things. I will be launching a show. So I did do I Like Your Dress, which I think you discussed earlier, which is a podcast that my the host of the show, but I was the co-host with her before, Allie. She's doing, and it's a great show. Like, definitely listen to it if you like educational comedy, because that's how it's pitched.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I think she's still maintaining it. I should pester her. I'll probably come back every once in a while to help her with it. But and I'm going to be launching a show in December, which is not ready yet, called Board Game Bitch, because I love board games. I worked so hard for that title, and when I was not taken by anyone, I was like, yes. And I got all the social media, even though I don't have anything made for it yet. I like made all the accounts because I was just like, I don't want anyone to take my idea in like the next month. Yeah, so that's going to be a podcast where I review board games and talk about board game strategies, which I'm stoked for, because it's like another one of the things that I just love and grew up with a lot. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It doesn't exist yet, so hopefully maybe by the time, I don't know, it exists in December if you can listen to it.
All right. Yes, send me a link. I want to just thank you for coming on, and best of luck with everything. Take care, and hopefully I'll speak to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I can't wait to check out your show and promote the fuck out of it too.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, awesome. Cool.
Take care. See you soon. I'll say it in French. I'll say à bientôt.
À bientôt. Okay. Oui, si tu veux. You can do that.
Has been Victoria Fraser. Hope you find her enticing as the House of Fraser and as fashionable as the House of Fraser. I've enjoyed having her on, and I hope you've gained a lot from it. If you liked the episode, please leave a review on iTunes, and I'll see you at the next episode.